serving the big party for us.
Go ahead. The kitchen is backed up right now.
Welcome everybody to our April already continuing education meeting. We could probably go around and introduce ourselves to our guests tonight, so they all know exactly who they're speaking with. Mark Stagg, Homestead Professional Inspections out of Whitehall.
Terry Elliott, Chippewa Valley Home Inspections out of Fall Creek.
Dave Welch, Top Down Home Inspections out of Chippewa.
James Davis, Ideal Inspection Services, Chippewa Falls.
Jared Succo, Wisconsin Building Inspectors, Eau Claire.
John Hempel, New Age Inspection, Eau Claire.
Ryan Lindner, RL Home Inspections, Greenwood.
Scott Jarvis, Jarvis Home Services, Eau Claire.
Bill Cutsworth, Cuts Home Inspections, Rice Lake.
Brian Opel's Home Inspections in Greenwood.
And I'm Paul Canfield, Realtor, who's going to talk about home inspections, and this is my token Realtor friend, Nate Moffman, who we work together at Copper Key. And whenever I screw up, he can correct me.
All right, so I'd just like to thank everyone again that helped out at the state seminar. Everyone did a great job, and we had nothing but positive reviews back from all across the state, so it was a great job again, and thank everyone very much for all your efforts. It was greatly appreciated and well received by everyone else in the
Everybody loved Jason at the end.
Everyone loved Jason.
He's
yeah.
entertaining.
Yeah, he was the perfect ending speaker. So on that note, I don't have anything else that I wanted to bring up. Dave, I don't know if you had anything?
Not really, no.
So on that note, the floor is all yours, so
Okay.
thank you.
And thanks for having us, guys. When we initially talked about, what I have to say, what can we talk about? I've been selling real estate in this area since 1997, so I've dealt with you guys quite a bit. And of all the areas that we have problems on real estate sales, there's two main problems: inspections and lenders. So if there's an area of problems to manage, those are the ones that we try to pre-solve the problems ahead of time. And that's what, for our section, that's what I wanted to talk about here. So I want to talk about how we present things to buyers. Now, when I say we, I say me and anybody I've trained, our office. This does not generally tend to apply to a lot of real estate agents. If I'm going to talk a little bit negative about real estate agents, because I'm sure you guys have all ran into agents that you kind of wondered, like, how did they get their license? The difficulty in getting a real estate license, the bar is kind of low in Wisconsin. Realistically, it is. And people get a real estate license for all sorts of reasons, whether it's their primary main job, and that's what they do, whether it's a part-time job because they got to get out of the house, it's because they're retired, they love HGTV, so there's a whole variety of reasons of why agents get their license. And a lot of times, buyers, the thing that they want to do is they want to look at homes. And they don't like paperwork, all this stuff written by attorneys. Nobody likes that stuff. And if an agent is not quick to try to corral their buyer and start training them, it's easy just to go, oh, you want to look at homes? Great, you want to buy? Oh, cool, I got a customer, and let's go look at homes. And we go look at homes, and then some of them aren't any good, and they find one that's great, and they love it, and we write an offer. And a lot of agents, they're afraid of bringing up potential problems that might come up in the future, because that might blow up the deal. And so I don't want to bring up potential problems. And if there's a problem with the house, I'll let the home inspector explain it to the buyer. And so you get a lot of untrained agents who also work with a lot of untrained buyers who, by the time you get to them, they don't know anything. And a lot of people, and I'm going to stereotype younger people, don't know anything about home maintenance, home repairs, how to fix things, what do things cost. They've never done it before. But it's not just younger people. I mean, my mom, she wouldn't know the first thing about fixing something other than to call a guy, to fix the thing. So a huge portion of the population has a hard time figuring out this stuff. So the charts that I drew here, my little goofy little pyramid on the second page, picture buyers and sellers. The two different worlds of people that own real estate that they want to sell and then buyers are 180 degrees apart. So what do buyers want? Well, buyers would like to buy everything preferably at half price. They would like every inspection and test under the sun. They don't want to take one bit of risk at all. They want insurance that absolutely nothing will fail, preferably for the whole time they own the house. They don't want to replace anything, ever. They want all the neighbors to be nice. They don't want any of the neighbors to have junk in their yard, turn the radio up past 10. They don't want them smoking or swearing or using harsh language or calling the police or having traffic on the road. This is what buyers would like. What would sellers like? Well, sellers would prefer, when they list their house, they prefer that there was no showings, that people would just buy it sight unseen, that they wouldn't ask for a goddamn thing, that buyers would show up with a suitcase full of cash. That would be really nice. And so these are the people that we start out with, and that's their perspective. Now, usually they don't say that out loud, but I know what that's what their perspective is. And so if somebody says, hey, Paul, I want to list my house, what can you bring me? Well, they would like me to bring them $1 million tomorrow with no conditions and close whenever they want and be able to take, well, they really like this wallpaper. They'd like to take the wallpaper. And so I have to bring them down to, well, you're not going to get $1 million probably. It's probably going to be less than that. You're probably going to have a lot of showings. And yes, people are going to be walking on in your house. Some of them aren't going to take their shoes off. I don't care how many notes I put up saying, take your shoes off. Not everybody's going to take their shoes off. You can lock the door to the bathroom if you want. Somebody's still going to get in and use the bathroom. They will, sorry. They're going to look in your closets. So the stuff you have in your closet that you don't want people to see, don't have it in the closet. Put it somewhere else. Hide it.
They will open drawers, they will have their kids bounce
They
them.
will. Yeah. Oh God, I'm at a house yesterday and the kids find the round ball that people sit at their desk because they don't want to sit in a chair. They were playing basketball with it, and the parents thought it was cute.
Yeah.
And I want to say, you little bastards, and smack, but I can't do that. So I'm just praying they don't break anything with the ball that's this big. They're throwing down the stairs. So our sellers are way over here wanting the perfect world, and so are the buyers. And our whole job is to try to get you into the middle. So what Nate was talking about, when you meet with a buyer, they want to show homes. That's the last thing we agents want to do. I don't want to get out and go running around showing you homes. I would prefer that you sit down and listen to me for a little bit, and I want to find out, are you looking to buy a home like this year? I can't tell you how many people come into open houses and they start asking me all these nitpicky questions. What's the XL Energy bill? And what type of shingles are those? And finally, if I can get them to pause and I can get a word in edgewise, and I say, so what brought you here today? What's got you looking? Oh, I remember one in particular. Oh yeah, no, it's not for me, it's for my son. He's in the military, he's in Iraq, he's gonna be there for another 3 years, but when he's back, I wanted to. Then what does it matter what the XL bill is, or what kind of shingles are on this house? It's gonna be long gone in 3 years when your son gets back. So I need to slow him down, slow down, calm down. Yeah, have you been to the bank? Do you actually have any money? Oh, well, I'm sure I'd be able to. Good. So it's a battle immediately of buyer wants to go and look at homes because they look good and they've already been to open houses and they already probably called a couple other agents. They called the agent on the sign. That's who you're supposed to call, right? The agent on the sign. And those other agents didn't corral them in. That's why they're still talking to me or Nate, because the other agent went and showed them the house, and then they used the old super secret sales tactic. Did you like it? And they said, no. Okay, thanks. Well, here's my card. Call me if you find something else. And that's usually the extent of the talk, the education that goes on. And so then that buyer didn't learn anything other than they didn't like that one house. So now, but this other house came up. Well, I should call Mark. He's the guy inside. Okay. Now I should call James. He's the guy inside. But sooner or later, hopefully, please God, sooner or later they hook up with an agent that knows something, and the agent says, time out. Let's quit jumping and running out of my office to quick show you this one house. Let's sit down and talk about this process. So if we can get people to sit down, calm down, if I can get them to spend an hour with me, half an hour, depends on your talk. I know by the end that I have a buyer, and the three things we look for, I need a buyer that's ready, willing, and able. There's a lot of people that are ready and willing, but they don't have the money. And so I can waste all the time in the world showing them homes, but if they can't buy it, they can't buy it. So I need people that are ready, willing, and able. If they're gonna sit down with me and I'm gonna go over all this paperwork and have them take it home and read it, and then they call me back, now I got them trained. Now I know that I'm probably gonna get them to buy it, I'm gonna make a reasonable offer. And when we get to things like home inspections, they're gonna know how this works. So, in this chart, this one here, the one with the little pyramid, I'm gonna use this twice. When a buyer first out, they're at the bottom left of the pyramid, and they don't know what they're doing. They're looking online, they're looking, maybe to pick up today's real estate in the grocery store. They call a few agents, they go to open houses. Sooner or later, hopefully they hook up with an agent. Between then and the peak there, or where they find the house that they actually wanna buy, I wanna educate them on all the stuff about a house. And there's a part of our paperwork that says that anything that matters to a buyer, we want a buyer to check out by an independent third party, somebody who's not involved in the sale. And we tell buyers that when I'm working with you, buyer, there's gonna be times when you're gonna think that I'm not being helpful. And believe me, I wanna be helpful. My natural inclination just as a person, especially as a salesperson, is try to help you out, try to give you answers. But almost any question you ask me, I'm going to direct you. So I want you, buyer, to come up with anything that comes to your mind, but I'm not going to answer it. I'm going to direct you on where to get the answers. So if you say, are these good shingles? I don't know, I'm not a roofer. And so, but if shingles really matter to you, then let's get a roofer in here, talk about shingles. Is there a lot of crime in this neighborhood? Well, if somebody's moving to Eau Claire from Fairchild, then yes, we have tons of crime. All those college kids being in the bushes on homecoming, oh my God. If you're moving here from Milwaukee, we have no crime. We don't know what crime is. And so the crime rate is the same, but to those two different people, it's a wildly different crime rate. I was at an open house one time, and first guy walks in and he goes, what are they asking for this house again? And I told him it was like 200 grand. And he goes, ha, Jesus. What, 200? Are you kidding? How can they ask that much? There's no way on earth that. And I said, where are you moving from? Well, outside of Fairchild. The very next person walked in and said, what are they asking for this house? I said, 200. And they went, Jesus, you're giving it away. I'm like, really, where are you from? Woodbury. So I was an idiot in both directions on my pricing within a minute of these two people. Both of them thought I was a moron. And the price was the same, but, to them. And so if I can get people to listen to me, I'm gonna say, look, ask me anything you want, but I'm gonna direct you outside to an expert. So now, buyer, and I tell rookie agents this, when you think about selling real estate, a lot of agents are intimidated thinking they have to know a lot about a house. They have to know about construction and 2x4s and shingles and components and how does the furnace, what's the difference between a gas furnace and an oil furnace? And LP versus natural gas. So, distributor stuff. So when they're worried about that, I tell them, look, because of that one paragraph on our offers, say that anything that the buyers are curious about, you need to have them check out by the independent third party. You actually don't need to know anything about houses. You don't need to know what are good windows or shingles or is a 2x6 sidewall better than a 2x4 sidewall? You don't need to know anything, because we're gonna ask them, does that matter to you? And if it does, we'll get worried about the concrete foundation, get a foundation person in here and look at it. So then, when we talk about, someday buyer, I know it's the beginning stages here and I'm giving you all this paperwork and I want you to take it home and read it. And during this time, I want you to come up with questions of what is radon? Do your homework on it, figure out for yourself. How bad are you gonna be concerned about radon? Lead paint, asbestos, shingles, timbers, roof, all this stuff. So come up with these things. But once we get to the point where we're gonna make an offer, my job as an agent is not to get you a deal. That's not it. It's not to tell you what to offer. And it's not to tell you what contingencies you should have. So what we're gonna do is, back in the middle of this sheet, my fictional price is $349.9. Say we get two offers. So without knowing what all these little lines are, which offer does the seller like better? The one with a whole bunch of stuff on it, or the one with less stuff on it? Less stuff, right? And so, on average, a lot of people get excited about, well, you know, what should we offer? What price should we offer? Well, price to us agents is the last thing I want to talk about. Because a lot of people think, well, let's figure out the price, $349.9, let's offer them $340. And I want them to replace the furnace, and I want a home inspection, and I want a radon test, and I want a lead paint test, and I want a well and septic inspection, and I want them to paint the kitchen, and I want $5,000 of closing costs back. Okay, well, that's not exactly $340, that's $340 with a whole bunch of stuff. So we want to start with the stuff first, and the very last thing, get to price. And so then I'm going to bring them up, when we get into price, I'm gonna say, okay, we need to assume we're gonna compete with another offer. And you guys would be amazed how many times we get 2 offers on a house. It's uncanny, it's weird. So even if, so it's uncanny. So a house can sit on the market for months. I've had them on the market for years, and 2 offers come in at the same time. It's just goofy, it's weird. And so we prep buyers that, we tell them, look, you should just anticipate that you will be competing with that other offer. And so when we talk about an offer and you're looking to me for advice on like, what should you do? Well, I want you to make the offer that if you get it, you're happy. And if you lose it to another offer, that's okay too. I don't want to hear from you, damn it, I would have paid that. This isn't used cars. I can't go get you another one right here. So then, after we go through the stuff, if somebody says, well, I can't pay cash for this house, I gotta get a mortgage. Okay, fine, then we're gonna have a financing agency. If we talk about inspections, and they say, you know what, I just would not be comfortable buying this house without getting a home inspection. Fine, no problem, we'll do that. But, just so you know, and we will keep reiterating this, just so you know, when 2 offers come in, it's weird how many times the price is really similar. So a lot of times 2 offers get decided on the other stuff. Who's got more earnest money? Who's asking for more inspections and tests and all these things to protect you? All things being equal, a seller would prefer no inspection versus an inspection. Because all they view an inspection is a way to wiggle out of the offer later, or to complain about stuff, or to try to squeeze the seller for more money, get the seller to fix things. And so back to this chart, the pyramid, when the buyer writes the offer, and at that point in time, they're excited, oh my gosh, I hope the seller takes the offer. That's the best one we found, and I've heard that there was a lot of people at the open house, and we might lose it. And then the seller signs it, and then it's like air just goes out of the balloon. Then, like Nate said earlier, they talk to mom and dad. By the way, we hate parents. So those of you that are parents, we hate you when you're involved with your kids.
We don't like them showing up to the inspection sometimes.
Oh, God, you know. Wow, when I put on my roof back 16 years ago, you know, yes, I hate parents.
When the moms turn and go, I wouldn't buy this, you should not buy this.
It's the dads.
Oh,
Yeah.
I had one in a small house, and mom and dad were there, and it was like, I think it was right after the inspection, and they started, and I go, family meeting, you know, and I kind of do them, you know, and like, here's the deal. We looked at 20 houses, okay? So we always invite them to go out, like Uncle Bob, Dad, whoever, totally welcome to come in. They have to go either to all of them or none of them. You can't go to the last, oh, my dad's just gonna come in when we pick one out, and then, no, Dad can go to all of them or none. But he's gotta see what we've seen out there, or is that no frame of reference?
Right, because
And then they'll all love it once they see them all.
because the buyer starts down here and they look at the one that's, you know, 25 grand. Oh, I might get a deal. It might be awesome. Maybe like on HGTV, I just paint the kitchen and I'll make 50 grand if I flip it. You know, and then after a while they figure out that the reason they're the cheapest ones is because they're the cheapest ones. And then, well, okay, then we can finally get up to the one that's good enough. And if that's when you bring dad in, or mom in, or Uncle Bob, or the buddy the contractor, or whoever, to their perspective, they live in a house that's up here, so this is the bottom of the pool. This house sucks. Everything's wrong with it. None of this house that the kid's buying is as good as my house that I live in now. And so the air gets let out. So, back to teaching our buyers, back to previewing how this is gonna go. First, we're gonna talk about, you know, do we, of all these contingencies, these things that you want. So we'll, at first, we're gonna teach them, this is before we ever like a house. Then we're gonna get to the house that we like, and then we're gonna go over the offer again in more detail. And then we're gonna talk about, okay, so you're telling me you want all these 10 things. So I want you to tell me again, look me in the eye, buyer, and tell me again that every single one of these is vital. You have to have them on this offer, or you won't buy this house. And if they say, yeah, okay, so if we turn the offer in and we lose it, because remember, we will most likely be competing with another offer. If we lose it, that's okay with you. We push them hard to say, yes, that's okay. Usually though, when now is push come to shove time, because they'll have read on the internet, they'll talk to mom and dad, they'll like talk to their friend, or they'll remember the last time they bought a house back when. They'll say, well, wait a minute though, if we put all this stuff in here, they can just make a counteroffer, right, if they don't like it? And the answer is, yes, they can. That's the key word, they can make a counteroffer. But they don't have to, and they don't always. But here's the thing, again, buyer, assuming we're competing with two offers, and let's say those two offers are really close, and let's say that you've done your homework, and this one's been at $349.9, and maybe it's been for sale for a month, and so you think, well, maybe the price is too high, maybe you can get a deal. Or maybe you're a private detective in your spare time, and you've heard rumor that they're getting divorced, or they're having another baby, they need a bigger house, or they got a job promotion, or whatever homework you think you found out, the rumor that you heard at the bar, that I can offer $340 and I'll get it. Well, it could be true that $340 was good enough for the seller. That could be true. Until offer number 2 comes in at $345. And so now, buyer, we want you to look at things from the seller's point of view. So back to the whole buyers are over here, sellers are over here, try to move them together. A lot of times we say, let's look at this from the other party's point of view. And so if a seller's sitting there with 2 offers, and let's say yours is $340, actually, if it was the only offer, it might have been good enough. The other one's at $345, which is gooder, it's better. So when the seller, they say, well, it's kind of hoping for $348, really. I mean, $348 comes out where my numbers want, I want my numbers to be. I'll say to the seller, okay, seller, let me just ask you this. So if you're in Las Vegas and you're at the table and you just won $345,000, are you willing to take the dice and gamble all or none to get $348? And usually they'd say, well, that would be stupid. Then I'll nod and go, yep, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about gambling, all or none, for $3 more grand, less than 1%. Is that what you're telling me? That's what you want to do? Well, and then they'll say, so here I've had the seller say this, well, yeah, but for the showing for these people, I sat in my car down the block and I watched when they were on the showing. They were here over an hour, so they really like it. You know, they might have been here for an hour because they were early going to the next house, and they were just standing around talking. So that doesn't mean anything. It could be that, you know, the kids, they had to change the kid's diaper, and that's why they delayed a little longer, and they were changing it on the kitchen table. Sorry, but that's how it works. And so, I can't tell you how many times sellers have gone, well, no, we're gonna counter. Okay, and then all the buyers walk. And I'll usually tell sellers, now you guys are gonna be surprised to hear this, seller, but sometimes when there's a couple, they're not always 100% on the same page. You guys ever been married? I'm sure you're always 100% in tune with your wife. you guys always agree 100% on everything, right? Usually people laugh and go, yeah, we've had a lot of buyers where one party says, I really like this house. And the other one says, well, fine, we'll make an offer on that house. If we don't get that house, we're gonna go revisit this house. I like this one better. Or even still, seller, we're talking to the seller now, what is the buyer out there doing while we're sitting here pondering these two offers? They're looking on their phone, on Zillow. Oh, holy cow, new one just got listed down the road. Okay, never mind, let's go to that one. So there's huge incentive for a seller, if the offer is good enough, to not be greedy, just shut up and take it. And so, all that old-fashioned perspective of, well, they can just make a counter offer if they don't like it, right? Yeah, they can, but they don't necessarily will. And so, I don't really care what contingencies a buyer wants on an offer. You can ask for anything under the sun. I'm just telling you that this one looks worse than this one. The one with fewer asks of the seller is better than the seller's point of view. So then, let's say that we win. Okay, we get our offer accepted, we have a home inspection. Now I'm gonna preview it, and this came up last time when I talked about the fact that agents, whether they should or should not go along. So if you go to the inspection page that I brought along, the stuff that I highlighted. So if you go to line 184, the buyers or licensees or both may be present at all inspections and tests. So that's true. So the legality is we, agents, could be there along with the buyer. The preference of the state of Wisconsin licensing department and of me is that we agents are not there. Because if we are there with you, it can be viewed in the court of law as if we were acting in a supervisory capacity over you guys. You know, for instance, maybe one of us are pals, and that's why I persuaded the buyer to go to you, and I could kind of somehow use the force and persuade you to not write up your report. It makes things look bad. Like maybe you'll gloss things over because we're pals. Now, I know that doesn't happen, and you guys know that doesn't happen, but that's how it would be perceived in court. So that's why we, in our office, don't go on home inspections. Now, I know some of you guys have talked about agents that go on them all the time religiously. That's their choice, that's up to them, we can't prevent them, the officer says they can be there. In my opinion, that's not wise for the agent to be there.
Do you go at the end at all?
Nope.
In the Milwaukee, Madison area, realtors have to be there.
The whole time?
Let the home inspector in, stay there the whole stinking time.
And I bet maybe it's a security thing with sellers not wanting strangers in the house, or, you know.
I got it.
Madison is its own breed of animal. Though.
Well, yeah.
And I got it. They'll just come right at the end
Yep.
and walk. And I don't mind that, because at least then when they go back to write that list up, the seller's not telling the agent what we said and getting it all skewed up. It's
Right.
It's right there. She's writing it down, or he's writing it down as we go. Well, you know, I could tell that bothers you. Let's talk about it when we get back to the office. You know, and usually I don't have any questions after the fact, because the agent has seen it. But them, the ones that don't come, and it doesn't matter to me which way it is, but sometimes I'll get the call. Now, what did you say about that? Because my buyer's asking for this. And you know, you tell them, and it's all fine.
Yep.
That's the only thing I see is, sometimes it's nice to have them at the end, just, because I don't, you know, you guys don't need your time wasted either, sitting there for 2 hours or 3 hours looking at these people.
Yeah.
You know, every once in a while I'll call just for a recap before I call the buyer, just go, what did
That's good, yeah.
Cause then I can compare notes of like, and you're like, and cause then, and then plus you guys can tell us stuff that.
Hey, Joe was really scared with this item.
Well, you know, cause, like that log home, and I'm like, no, I know he's not gonna guess on repairs for the buyer, but I'm like, all right, what do you think? He's like, I know, and he'll give me, but I'm not gonna, you know, but how bad could this be? I have a frame of reference, you
Yeah.
know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So in my talk here now, so now I'm with the buyer, and we're getting to the point of writing an offer, and I'm making them tell me, yes, all these contingencies, I gotta have it. I will not buy this house without these things. Fine. I'll preview, and the more that I can preview both problems and what other people are gonna say, the more they think I'm like Obi-Wan Kenobi and I can mind read. And so, like, when we talk about, you know, our mom and dad gonna come along, we'll preview with the young people. Yeah, guess what dad's gonna say? Dad's gonna say back in '86, we bought our house, you know, it paid $30,000. And then dad comes in and says that, and then they look at us like, wow, how'd you know? You know, yeah, I know, I have a magical connection. But I'll bring up the problems that are come up, because for this pyramid chart, the other use for this chart, aside from the excitement level, is I talk about homes, and I say, here's how a home gets built. They dig a hole, and then they build the home, and then the second it gets done, it starts wearing out. Sometime between the house, the second the house gets done and the end of time, every single thing on the house is gonna wear out, fall apart, die, whatever. When is the stuff gonna die? I don't know. Some of it might have already died already and they replaced it. Some of it could die while you're at the inspection. Some of it could die the day after you close. Usually that's when it does, because usually people move into a house and they use it differently than the prior person. You know, you have a little old grandma who lives in the house and she does one load of laundry every 2 weeks, and then the family with 6 kids moves in, and then the washer and dryer blow up, or the water heater melts, or, you know. So when is stuff gonna break? I don't know. And so just know that, and we'll tell them ahead of time, you know, the job of the home inspector is to find stuff. Their job isn't to gloss things over or to minimize things. We understand that. But just so you know, they will find things, because this house isn't brand new. And yes, I know that it's good to have one inspection on brand new homes too. I get that. But I'm just saying, they will find stuff that's wrong. So buyer, I want you to mentally preview the different types of problems that can come up. When we're looking at homes, there's 2 sets of problems on every home. Things you can fix, things you can't. So if you don't like the neighborhood, we're done talking. I can't fix that. If the road that this house is on is too busy, can't fix that either. If you look at the school map and you don't like the school district that it's in, But then we get to problems that we can fix. You don't like wallpaper? That's a fixable thing. That's just money. You can figure that out. The furnace is old. You can figure that out too. But if an agent knows what they're doing, and most of them don't, most of them are gonna preview hard on the things that the home inspection is for. It's a 2-part thing, what you guys are for. On the one hand, this will give you a to-do list, buyer, of all the things that you ought to concentrate on or think about or financially prepare for between now and when you sell the house down the line someday. But for purpose of the offer, we're only gonna talk about material defects. And the list of material defects, regardless of what the home inspectors have on their forms, is, to me, short. And the list, I have it highlighted on here what material defect is, but either it's A, something that's gonna kill you, so the cracked furnace heat exchanger lets gas in the house, kills you, or the house is gonna tip over. So the list of material defects, to me, is furnace heat exchanger is cracked, the roof leaks, which, yeah, roof leak is that a big deal, well, lets water intrusion in the house, and then you get mold, and then you die. Or the foundation wall is caving in. So then, short of those big material defects, is a whole list of gray. Well, there's not a GFI outlet in the garage, and the kitchen sink ribs, and there's a million things. You guys know what they all are. And then down here, there's stuff that don't count. What doesn't count? Well, anything that we had knowledge of before. So if that big picture window in the living room was cracked, we know that, we saw that. We don't later get to use the home inspector's report that says the window in the living room was cracked. We saw that. Also, anything that's disclosed on the seller's real estate condition report. So if the seller says that there's a leak in the roof in the corner of the garage, and then the home inspector later says there's a leak in the roof in the corner of the garage, we can't go back and say, hey, we want that fixed. No, we already knew about that. So those things are excluded, even though you guys are gonna end up talking about it later. So then, the question is, and I put down here, material defect, how material is it? So here's how the story goes, buyer, and here's how we push them and hopefully educate them ahead of time, and I wish more agents would educate them, is here's how the story is gonna go. Let's say that we whittle down the problems to the material defects. It's big, it's gonna kill you. Let's say the furnace heat exchanger is cracked. Okay, then the question is, how big of a deal is this? What are our options? Well, we have three options in general in how we're gonna proceed from, now we have the inspection report, it's got some problems. What are we gonna do? Well, A, the seller automatically gets a copy of the inspection report, we just send it over to them. And then we're gonna start by talking. Hey, listing agent, why don't you run this past your seller, just get their opinion. Now, there's quite a few sellers actually that either they truly didn't know that this stuff was wrong with their house, or they just have pride of ownership and then they wouldn't wanna sell a house with these things wrong. And so I've had tons of sellers go, yeah, I'll fix those things, or I'll fix the five bad things out of 10, or whatever. So we start by just talking. Then, buyer, we can offer an amendment. And so the difference between the two forms that we can use, one is an amendment, and an amendment is where we say, pretty please, hey, pretty please, would you fix the thing? And there, on an amendment, you can ask for anything. If you want the wallpaper removed in the living room, that's fine, we can ask for that. If you want the kitchen sink, the drip fixed, if the front door lock is sticky, you can ask to have that, but you can ask for anything you want in an amendment. If everybody agrees to an amendment, great, then seller said they're gonna do whatever you asked for, and we're gonna move forward. However, let's say the seller goes, nah, I don't feel like fixing any of this, I'm not gonna sign that amendment. Okay, now our second option of forms is a notice. So the difference between a notice and an amendment is like fishing. Throw the bait out, you can reel it back in. And if nobody agrees, no harm, no foul. A notice is like hunting. Once I shoot the bullet, I can't call it back. So buyer, if we decide that maybe we offer an amendment, and they said no, I'm not gonna fix all that stuff, then you have to decide, do we wanna do an amendment, or a notice. And the notice says, we demand that you fix this material defects, or the deal's off. Now, quite a few agents don't present the second part of that, or the deal's off. Buyers often think that they're in a controlling position, they have leverage, because, well, the paperwork here says right here what a material defect is. And we found that, the lease change was cracked, your foundation wall has a bowl caving in, or the roof leaks. And so, it says right here it's a defect, seller has to fix that, right? Because, they couldn't sell it to somebody else with this defect, could they? Okay, go back to this. Two offers come in, we're competing. You're lucky, buyer, hey, you won. So now, let's just say back here that you were the one that ended up at 345. And the other people, because they had to get a deal, because they read on the internet, nobody pays full price, or that's what their dad said, or they watched TV, or for whatever reason, they had to offer less. And their agent maybe didn't explain it very well to them. And they offered 340, they didn't get it. Now, what do they say? I really wanted that house, darn it, I would have paid that. Some buyers will say, well, how solid is the first offer, the one that got accepted? Now, a listing agent can't tell any details of the first offer. All they can say is, there's an offer and it's accepted, that's it. But they can say, well, it's not close yet. Never know. And so these people, the number two people, the ones that lost, they might say, well, yeah, we haven't found anything else that's quite as good as that one, so maybe we'll be a secondary offer. So now if they have my buyer at 345, do you think the seller's gonna take another offer at 340? No. They're gonna keep countering until they're at what? 347 or 8 to 350. And so now we have a position where the seller has a secondary offer for more money than my offer, the initial offer. I, though, working with buyer number one, I don't know about the secondary offer. And in fact, if I call the listing agent and say, do you have a secondary offer? They have to get permission from their seller to tell me. Well, does their seller want me to know that there's a secondary offer? Not really, because they would kind of like my offer to go away so they get the other offer for more money. So buyer, back to my buyer, so buyer, here's how the story is gonna go. We're gonna get the inspection report from the inspector. They're gonna have 20 things on it. Most of those things we've already talked about, right? That these are not material defects, so we're not complaining about the ugly caulk around the tub. And so we're gonna forget about 15 of these things. These last 5, maybe they're big, but then the question is how big? And so we might, preference here is to ask for an amendment first. If you're really worried about the roof leak, we're gonna ask for an amendment, saying, would you fix the leak in the roof? And if the seller goes, no, don't feel like it. We already took a lot less. The house we're buying next is costing us a lot of money, so no, we're not fixing any of this stuff. And, oh, no shit, it's a 50-year-old house. Well, of course there's gonna be things wrong with it. And so then, buyer, do we wanna give a notice? Because here's the way the story goes. This inspection report, which the seller gets to have a copy of, they're gonna take that inspection report to buyer number 2, and they're gonna say, hey, buyer number 2, if we get rid of buyer number 1, and here's the inspection report, and there's gonna be a leak in the roof over there, are you willing to accept this as is? And what are they gonna say? Yes. Because what does everybody want? They want the thing they can't have. The most beautiful woman I ever pondered dating, I dicked around until she got another boyfriend. And then, that's when I really wanted her. That's the same thing here. Because the secondary buyer is gonna go, yeah, we'll take it as is, and then boom, my buyer's gone. And they're out the inspection money that they've already paid you, they might be out the appraisal money that they have already done, and now they gotta start their search all over again. So there's huge pressure with any buyers that we work with, that it better be the end of the world before we give a notice of material defect on a house. And so, I point to this long-winded story about all this. That's why a lot of times buyers with me won't do an inspection. Because if we see a house, let's say it's 20, 25 years old, and they replaced the roof 5 years ago, and the furnace is 10 years old, and I can see in the basement the foundation walls just look like this room. Well, I can see the foundation walls aren't caving in. Could a 10-year-old roof have a leak? Yeah, it could. It's a probability. How much is a heat exchanger? $1,000, $2,000, $5,000? Is $5,000 on a $350,000 house big enough for you to cancel the whole deal? And usually they'll say no. I'll say, okay, back to this side concept. Fewer contingencies is better than more contingencies. Could you live with buying this house without a home inspection? And so that's when I'll usually talk somebody out of hiring one of you guys. Sorry.
Can I bring
Well,
something up, Paul?
we never tell them not to do an inspection.
Correct.
No.
We lay out, here's how it's gonna
We
look
just lay out,
from the
it's
seller.
it's just a negotiating strategy, and
Yep.
just saying, in the big picture of the negotiation, is a home inspection, and and I always say, if you're not sure, the answer is yes, we're doing an inspection. We never talk them out of it, but what he's saying is just in the, especially the last 5 years when things are so competitive, 15 grand over, there's 8 offers, and whatever, that's when look, I mean, how, that kind of thing, so.
Yep.
It's a negotiating thing, it's not nothing against home inspection.
Yeah, nothing against you guys.
One thing that might help you guys, I know some other agents that actually do this, they're writing, okay, it's a 20-year-old house, you really want an inspection, let's write in there that you'll pay for any repairs up to $5,000. That way,
Yep.
the buyer gets their inspection, they're happy. Even the log home is only $3,500. It's not, no one's jumping off a cliff for that, right?
We
So
do that a lot, yep, for sure.
Yeah.
It's
So
a good
that way-
middle ground, yep.
that way we get work too.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we-
That's a good middle ground, if we can get them all
It's,
through
Yeah.
it's a
that.
good
And
plan
the
too,
buyers are
for those
happy.
things that you don't see as you're walking through, like, I just did a pre-listing inspection on a guy's house. He had the roof replaced 10 years ago, and the whole roof is trash. It has to get replaced.
Wow.
Well, like
The
that one-
install was just, I mean, shingles are all falling out of place. It's just
Yeah.
trash.
Like the one that
You
you
know?
did in Altoona,
Yeah.
that duplex?
Yep.
Cause I'm total layman, I don't know any stuff about this stuff, but I'm pretty good about just noticing red flags, right? And so I know the buyer, and he probably goes, dude, the deal's gotta be out, and I'm like, oh, I thought myself, like, nah. I'm serious, and I go, and I've never been to an inspection, I'm like, is he still there? I'm like, I'm gonna try and cause I'm like, how did I miss this? Like, how could I miss, cause he's like, he kinda got a little spazzy, but within 2 hours, we canceled that deal.
Yeah.
But we were already up against another offer or two, so I called Jack, I just go call the other agent, just go have him do the other offer. I'll ask for the inspection, whatever, but here's what we found. But it was something like, I'm like, did I maybe go, like, no, you didn't really miss anything that was, like, there's nothing I could have seen. I usually have to kind of, you know, red flag it, but, yeah.
And that's why we do push for you guys to do the pre-listing inspection, because that avoids everything.
Yeah, as far as
Because
like
then
business you guys get,
The report.
every one of our clients get a pre-inspection unless they somehow absolutely refuse.
Right.
But all of our sellers get a home inspection, all of them.
Puts you in control. It leaves you in
100%.
control.
Right.
All this, well, like you said, most of our problems come from the home inspection or financing, mostly the home inspection, because it's the wild, wild west. Everybody wants the negotiations are out of control. They worked for years, and finally, like, I think it was his idea. It's like 13 years ago. He goes, I'm gonna start having to do a home inspection ahead of time.
Yeah, it was weird.
And everyone's like, what are you doing? Well, what if there's nothing wrong? Like, he's like, no. And like,
It's
and
good.
immediately I'm like, nope, that's
Yeah.
exactly what we're doing. Because so many of our transactions go so much more smoothly because it's all sorted out ahead of time.
Do you have
Not only that,
plans?
but you're negotiating twice when you do it for the buyer.
Absolutely,
You're doing
yes.
it for the price, and then you're doing it again for the price.
And it's the hardest negotiation is that part because there's so many factors.
Because they're down here.
And emotionally and all
They
the
can cool off.
So one of the other things I've had a handful of is kind of like what Dave had, or Terry was saying. We'll pay up to X amount, but I've had a lot. They're like, we had the home inspection in the offer, but only for informational purposes. We will not
Yep.
ask for anything beyond, like,
And-
even if the home's falling in half, we can't
that
ask
gets-
for it. We
and
just
that
We
want
did
gets
that
it.
on
brought-
that one, actually, that was on there.
And
We
that-
said, we're not gonna ask for anything, we're just looking for something major,
Yep.
and that's it, and that's what we did, you know.
And that comes up as problematic. I discourage that simply because it's human nature. Well, because remember back here, when they write the offer, oh my gosh, I wrote the ticket, and, you know, I won't complain about anything, and I just wanna know. But down here, you know, Dad said, and, oh shit, we pay too much, and, you know, and all this stuff. Now, if they find, well, yeah, but that's a lot worse than we expected. Okay, well, what part about informational purposes only
Yeah, that's all.
is only up to, you know, really bad. It's only up to kind of bad and you know, bad to really bad to kind of, you know, and so I don't
Do you
prefer
have
doing
clients
that.
that do a pre-listing that say, well, they just have it inspected so it looks clean? You know, I wouldn't. trust
There's
that.
there's a little tone of that, once in a while, it's, well, I think the owner just had his buddy, the inspector,
Yeah,
do it.
that's what I mean.
And I tell him, well, you know, you can always get a different inspector, you can go back to the original inspector if you want to do a re-inspection, and we explain about that they're now liable, you guys are liable to the buyer too. But then, you know, if you want to get a different inspector, that's fine, but the different inspector really would have to find something, it's a material defect that the first inspector missed. So, could that happen? Yeah, I suppose, but.
I
not
have ran
often.
into that where they have the pre-listing inspection, and they call and they're like, I saw that report, it looks like they were in and out of the house in like an hour. I want somebody else to come in.
Yep, totally, they're right to do
'cause-
that for
Yep,
sure.
yeah.
They can do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the pre-listing inspection saves us so many
Yeah,
headaches.
that was the
and-
best
And,
reinvention of.
you know, and
It makes more sense.
100%.
When if you're ever
I pay
talking
for a
to
lot of them
people-
too, 'cause I'm like, I call it a marketing expense, because comfortable buyers make better offers. I'm like, spend $400, you can control the costs. You can go to the hardware store and get, you know, for $75, get the wrap the asbestos tape in your, or you have dudes with spacesuits in it, the other guy, you know, like, there's so much you can control and do, and then, actually, we actually asked this, Terry and a couple other guys years ago, we're like, you know what, instead of having the homeowner sign off that they fixed their stuff, would you be willing to come back and just check their work, and then if you're okay with it, print a whole new report? Yeah, that's fine. Okay, now we have a
I
perfect
have
house on
asked
paper.
that, but I always tell them just check it off, because they said at least then it made it look like, because take a photo of it, check it off, I said, because then it looked like, hey,
Right,
we
whatever,
found it.
that's
we
up
fixed
to
it,"
you and the
instead of just
seller,
a
for
clean
sure.
report, oh, they didn't find nothing. No, wrong, we did find a lot, they just fixed it all.
Sure,
Right.
yeah, but
It's a horse, whatever.
Yeah, and you get, you know, so.
Right or wrong, it'd be
We're
right or
at that
wrong.
point, we're representing the sellers, and,
Yeah.
you know, like, he was talking about, like, all the weird things buyers do and all the weird things sellers do. Well, you know what, these are the same people. Same people. It's just what side are they on? Because we're all, and I always tell the agents in the office, they come in, they, can you believe the seller said and did all this stuff, and for the buyer, and we go, and it's, you know, crazy, you know, and I listen, and I go, you know what that makes them, like, what? I'm like, normal, because you'll do it too. You know, when you get in that negotiating position, you're like, oh, you know.
I had
So-
I had the funniest one, I wish I could have caught the client on camera, where I had a house listed, and they just would not get a listing inspection done ahead of time, just wouldn't do it. But we're still all looking at homes to buy, and we're looking at this old home, it's been added on 3 times, and we're going through it, and he's like, yeah, geez, I just wonder about the, you know, and I go, yeah, boy, it'd be nice if they would've had a listing inspection for us, wouldn't they? And he goes, yeah, and then he's like, he's kinda pissed. I'm like, well, yeah.
I'm not
That's
trying
what
to
we're
get
talking
off
about here.
subject, but how do you feel about what's going on in Massachusetts and New York about the right to a home inspection? The legislation they're trying to pass that no matter what, the
Haven't
home
heard about
inspection,
this.
the
No.
home inspection won't be a contingency. Everybody has a right after the offer is accepted.
That's-
Everybody
home
would have a right.
inspection, just do it, have the sellers do it beforehand, done.
Yeah, I don't know, I haven't heard about that.
I mean, that would help your negotiations, right,
The
as
other
far
thing
as the seller and all that
If
going.
you guys are talking to other agents and you're trying to convince them to do a home inspection, like especially for the listers, the sellers, I should probably give away some of our trade secrets, but basically, when you're doing it ahead of time, what was I gonna say about that? Well, we're
Well, the analogy that works really good is I'll tell them, look, if you wanna buy my old Chevy truck out in the parking lot, you don't know what you're getting. But if you buy the same exact Chevy truck at Marker Motors with their sticker in the window that has all the stuff checked, even if there's stuff wrong, it's the same truck, but you're willing to pay more money for it.
yes, you can get a $10,000 better offer, $5,000 for a $400 inspection. It's not even. It's just such a no-brainer on our end. It's
Right.
just we literally will not list the house unless they absolutely throw a fit without doing a home inspection first. Just get it done now.
Get it done.
All this stuff is unnecessary on the back and forth. It's just, it wrecks so many deals
Mhm.
unnecessarily when could have just done it ahead of time.
Going back to that, changing the report, doing a re-inspection and whatnot, I've had a lot of real estate agents, pre-listings I've done, they're like, hey, can you come back, take that out of the original report, put this
Yep.
new stuff in after we replace it? I said, my insurance company told me that's fraudulent report because that is not what it was on the date that it was actually done, so you have two
No,
different.
because now you're going back. It's not fraudulent. You just, because now you have to write that
No.
report as that day.
So you're saying if
the
you just-
agent wants me to take the issues out,
No,
put the
no,
new
just-
photos
you can just write a
in.
brand new
So
report.
Yeah,
it's,
but it's that day then.
no, this is like a week or two after
Yeah,
that.
they want you
But
to.
it's
Put in
it's
a
just,
new date.
Yeah.
put a new
Put a new
date,
date
put the
in.
new date in.
You have to put a new
You
date
have to
in.
put it
So-
revised on. such
We
and
have
such
to
date.
put a new date on.
Right.
It's revised, so it's
So,
not a big deal.
what I tell them is I can do a re-inspection just of the issues that were fixed, and then put that with the original report.
Sure.
You can do it that way.
Because
Anyway,
it
it's
looks,
dated.
because and tell me if I'm wrong, but to me, as a buyer, it looks better from the seller's standpoint. There were issues, we're not trying to hide them, they were fixed, here are
Mhm.
the issues that were
Yeah,
repaired.
Depends on the
any of
issue.
those would be fine.
Exactly.
Depends on the issue.
And this is-
One thing that we're trying to do more of, which you won't see a lot, but if you look on the offer part, on line 196, so, you know, line 194 says you guys are allowed to be in there to inspect the property, but then the next one is where, you have yet another person to inspect like a specific component, the roof, the furnace, whatever. So we try to push, like if we're in a house and it got, obviously it's a 100-year-old furnace, I just know you guys are gonna say, recommend HVAC contractor look at the furnace. So let's just put it in there to begin with. But let's say it's not in there, or let's say the buyer doesn't know, they might not have a copy of their offer with them that you can see. You just might say while you're there, just so you know, talk to your agent right away, because this furnace is 100 years old. And I'm gonna recommend in my report that you'll get later today or tomorrow, or whenever it is, that you have a HVAC person in. Just so you can get the ball running. So if you talk with your agent, and if you are gonna have certified come in and look at furnace, let's get going on that right now, because the clock is ticking, we're running short on time. So, because we have to, for whatever the contingency deadline is, you know, like mine here says line 206, 20 days. So usually by the time you guys get there, we're probably a good weekend, if not more, from whenever all the stuff got signed. And then we got around to calling you, then you can fit in your schedule.
What are you guys putting in for contingencies now? A week, 14 days, 21 days,
and
21?
I do 21, but we'll just do whatever you guys, how busy you guys are.
Yeah, if you
I
guys tell us
always
you're
ask
a
you,
couple
if you're
weeks
like, hey,
out.
because it's not just the inspection, it's gonna tell them about the deadline. It's not just when the inspector gets
You
there.
gotta, that's what you gotta ask for, I think.
So the deadline, the whole point of the number of days, that's the number of days that the buyer can give a notice of defects. So they have to get you in.
That means all the inspections are done, the heating contractor, the roofer,
Follow-up stuff.
whoever else has to come in.
Yep.
Right.
And we have to give an amendment, and then they hem and haw for a couple days, and now we gotta do the ultimatum notice, like,
Right.
now
I've
we're
had a
gambling.
lot of them lately
That's not a lot of
where,
time.
where the buyer says it has to be done within a week, my agent told me, because she only wrote it in 7 days or 10 days.
I've had a lot of 7 to 10 days.
That's,
Because that's ridiculous. By the time they even call you, might be a couple of days. Then you guys are
Right.
busy.
right.
You're not
You know,
sitting around going, I can go tonight, you know.
That's like, well, the listing agent will say, well, I don't want it off the market that long.
Right. I mean, so, but like, then you guys.
Then you
have
should
to-
have had a pre-inspection.
Then you guys have to do then you have to send the report.
Yeah.
Then we have to get it. Maybe we don't check the email for a day, and then we're like, oh, okay. Then if there's like, well, we need the HVAC guy in there. Well,
Oh geez,
No,
time
that-
ran out, right?
So
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not even. That's terrible. Like as far as.
So back to my original talk about, here's the buyers over here, and here's the sellers. Buyers would prefer, that we close whenever they want, but they would prefer a month or two to have all the inspections done. Sellers though don't want that, so we're gonna remind them back to the, here's two offers and you're competing. So if you ask for 30 days to get your inspections done, yes, you're kinda sorta tying up the house for 30 days. And the home inspection that asked for 12 days, well, if they both have to have an inspection, I'd rather see 12 than 30. And so it's a continual argument of even though I might be a buyer agent, I'm working on your behalf, I'm working in your interest. Yeah, part of my working in your interest is to help you actually get the house. You're telling me this is the one you want. My job is to try to figure out how to get it to you. Now, I would prefer that you write an offer that is exactly what the seller wants. Cash, no contingencies, close whenever. That'd be great, but you are unwilling to do that, buyer. You want this stuff to protect you, you wanna make sure you get a mortgage, you get a home inspection, you get all this stuff. So, okay, there's a chance we're not gonna get it because of all this stuff you're asking for. So then if you insist on getting the home inspection, maybe we call you guys, how busy are you? You say, well, today is Wednesday, I can't get there yet this week, but I can get it Monday. Okay, well, maybe then we'll put 15 days, and hopefully we can get on it quick. And preferably with that one line about the secondary inspectors, maybe we'll just anticipate that ahead of time. We'll get certified going on the line along with you guys, or the roofing contractor, or whoever, all this people. But yeah, it's a continual battle, like, you guys would like enough time, so you got plenty of time to get there.
These
Yeah, I get
negotiations
that.
don't end until closing.
Right, it's
So-
never ending.
Yeah.
So when we write something up, let's say, the roof is leaking, needs to be, and we always write in there, work needs to be performed by a licensed, qualified, blah, 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 right? So, repairs get done by the homeowner, even though you write that in there, you as a buyer write that in there and present it to the seller. Work is done by the homeowner, oh, I can do that myself.
Okay, so,
And then it comes back to us, the buyer's agent says, hey, can you go look at this guy's work, he fixed it himself. I said, that's not how it's supposed to be done.
So to that question, that's a good point. So if a buyer proposes an amendment, the buyer, both the buyer and the seller have a lot more control over how things get done. So a buyer on an amendment, I mean, that's where we're saying, hey, pretty please, would you fix the roof or the thing? That's where they can say, buyer agrees to repair the roof rather than replace, by a licensed roofing contractor. And they're gonna replace it with black 30-year certainty shingles. So now we're all agreeing exactly who's gonna do the work and how it's gonna get done. But if the seller goes, nope, I'm not doing this amendment, and the buyer goes, all right, well, we talked it over, and yes, I'm willing to give a notice, and I'm willing to risk that the seller will cancel this contract and kick me out. So I'm insisting on getting the roof leak fixed. If the buyer gives a notice, they have no control over how it gets done. So the work just has to be done in a good and workmanship-like manner, able to be re-inspected. And so if it meets whatever the standard is for the thing being done, the plumbing, the electrical, or whatever, if it's done right, whether Joe Handy homeowner does it themselves or not, that's fine. So whatever the minimum standard for that piece of work being done, the homeowner has complete control to do it themselves, hire brother Bob to do it, or hire certified to do it.
So
Right
to
there on
answer-
line,
to
line
answer-
220, right?
To answer your question,
Mhm.
you're gonna go with the same definition that we are legally from Wisconsin. It's a good workmanlike manner.
Mhm.
If you determine that's not in a good workmanlike manner, you're gonna be the umpire. You go, no. or,
Straight,
So again, I know you guys hate gray, we do too, but our whole life is gray. So it's,
Well, and.
More to his point though would be like, so there was a house I can remember that bunch of red flags with the roof, loose shingles, like there was a bunch of problems. So my report, I wrote this as a defect. I recommend further evaluation and repair or replace by a roofing contractor. I got a call from the listing agent. The homeowner went up there and he nailed down all the loose shingles. Can you come back and re-inspect? I said, no. I said, I recommended further evaluation by a roofing contractor because there very well be more shit wrong with this roof. Like, and she's like, well, what are we supposed to do? I said, hire a roofer to say it's okay.
sure.
But you
Can't
can't
get
put,
somebody to do
you
that.
can't put me on the hook for their
right.
work.
100%.
It's like, that's,
Yep,
you know.
and that's a constant battle.
Yep.
And so, when we work with sellers, we go on at length about getting the pre-listing done, and if they just won't frickin' do it, and then later these problems come up, I go, hey, well, I told you, we could have avoided all this crap. And so now that we're worried about losing them, and it's gonna cost you money, well, we could have figured this out all way back when. Now, I can't go cash the checks on sales that don't close because I'm right, so I get that. So I still have to suck it up and go, okay, and then ask the other agent. But we also know, and we pre-warn everybody, if we ask a roofer to come out here, what are they gonna say? Oh, totally wrong, needs a new roof. And I think I was joking with you guys last time when I was here, during the parade of homes, when they do the tour before the parade starts, and they bring all the builders on the bus. Well, all the builders, oh, Jesus God, he did it that way? Well, that's not the way you do it. You can't put the column like that, it's gotta be like this. And everybody thought the other guy did it wrong. So who's right? I don't know. I get 3 roofers out there, they're gonna have 3 different opinions on how the shingles should have been screwed down.
Yeah, ask any roofers to drive by any house.
Oh, yeah.
Let's be torn down and redone,
So, yeah, there is no, I wish there were simple answers of yes or no, but there isn't. But the who's gonna do the work, can Joe Handy homeowner do it? If they get a notice, they can do it however they want.
A notice of
Notice of defect.
Then they can.
And it has to be a notice of defect, I think I highlighted, as noted in your report. So it can't just be a defect that they kinda dreamt up while they were there. If it's not listed in your report, it really doesn't count.
so notice a defect, you can't write like, we want this roof fixed by a roofing contractor.
Nope, that's an amendment. So there's agents that will do a 2-step process. One, our preference would be do an amendment first. That's again, that really is pretty please, would you do this? That's the nicer way than shooting the gun and saying, do this or else. So we'll offer pretty please. Another way, let's say we have 20 days on here and it's day 19. And maybe we talked, maybe we offered an amendment, and we're not getting anywhere. And we're running up on our deadline. So our deadline is to give a notice of defect. Let's say, okay, fine, I'm gonna give a notice of defect, you gotta fix the hole in the roof. But I'm also offering an amendment, and then this is where we're working with our buyer to say, look, we're giving a demand notice here. We're demanding that they do something, which they won't like, just so you know, there's no way they're gonna like this. And so, let's try to soften the blow by saying that, we would like, XYZ roofing company to do this, but when we wrote the offer, we knew this was not a brand new roof. Did we agree on that, buyer? Oh, yeah, okay, well, maybe we didn't know about the leak in the roof around the bad flashing around the chimney, but we knew the roof wasn't new. I mean, we all looked at it and said, that's not new. So, if you're gonna get a whole new roof, how about, would it be reasonable to say, maybe you pay some of it? Maybe you pay half, or a third, or maybe let's just chip in a number. The roof's probably gonna be 15 grand, maybe you'll pay 8. And if it ends up being 12 grand, or it ends up being 20 grand, then that's too bad for the seller, or good for the seller, lucky them, they got a deal, And so we'll push them to try to soften the blow. So we still get in within our deadline. If you insist, you're willing to lose the house, so then in the amendment, we'll write, here's the notice of defect, demanding you fix the roof, but, we're willing to soften the blow. We're gonna, ask for a professional roofing company to do it with 30-year black certainty shingles, with replacing all the underlayment, and, we're willing to pay X, and, if you agree to this, then our notice is withdrawn, so we're not backing on this deal. So we try, it's tough, it doesn't work,
Right.
because we're now down here in our, our enthusiasm level in our head, so now it's a fight. It's a fight to get seller to do anything, because Jesus, I already took a lot less than I expected, now you're asking for more. And the buyer's thinking, well, I paid you a premium for that house, and now you don't wanna fix things, what's wrong with you? And everybody's mad.
The question
We deal
about
with
that
mad people
then.
mad all the time.
So if they put the notice in, roof leak needs to be fixed. Can't say how it's fixed, just gets fixed. Homeowner could go up, seller, spray a bunch of Flex Seal on it, it doesn't leak anymore.
That's not workmanship like.
Yeah, it's
That's
not
what-
workmanship,
Workmanship like they were just talking about.
but.
Oh,
they-
yeah, okay.
But they could go to Menards and go to the odd lot section and get any color of asphalt shingle.
Slide it in.
And so it could be like a big, bullseye, completely different color. That's fine, because the main purpose of the shingle is to keep water out. It's not to be pretty, not to match. So yeah, they could hobgobble a thing, so we tell our buyers, hey, just so you know, if you give this demand, and they're pissed off, and they have to do this, that's how they might do it. Do you guys remember the slumlord in Eau Claire? I can't remember what his name is. Shouldn't bring him up anyway. But anyway, he owned every college rental, and he wouldn't put a dime into them. And he had the big old house down in the Third Ward that the city had been after him for years because he had all this peeling paint. You gotta, can't have all this bare wood, exposed wood. So the city county health department had been after him for years. So finally, he painted the whole house, big huge 2-story, Pepto-Bismol pink. That was a fix. All the neighbors hated it. They all complained, it's not in character with the neighborhood. Oh my God, it's Third Ward, no. But he painted it Pepto-Bismol pink because that complied with the rule. The house is painted. Showed them. And when he finally sold it, the new owner repainted it, but he kept, I think, one of the little triangular windows up in the peak, kept it pink, just to remember the old days.
So
But
I wasn't in any way part of, a couple years ago when you guys were going through the thing, when you had the big debate and new rule about calling something defect, but you see how it was such a problem where like, at some point, somebody needs to make the call. Cause we're like, cause the seller's like, well, it's not, and the buyer's like, it is, we're like, and you guys like, oh, we don't wanna put our butts on the line, we're like, somebody's gotta make the call, somebody has to like,
is this a defect or not?
right, and we're just like, is it a good workman-like manner or not, like, that's why that was such a push, was like, it was so frustrating for everybody, because nobody wanted to.
But
have a hot potato.
what that opened up, the can of worms, is it says in the inspector's opinion, so you could have 3 inspectors come in.
Right.
And now
Right.
3 different things are labeled
Right.
defects that the other one doesn't.
Yes, that's right,
Yep.
yeah. Yep.
And so when I'm talking about this lengthy talk that we have about people, previewing the 2 offers, and here's what Dad's gonna say, and your excitement level, and all that stuff, most buyers don't get that because most agents don't get that. Most agents don't address this at all. The extent of talk, and I know I'm talking down on our industry, but that's the reality. I've seen it over almost 30 years. And the extent is, they're really, a lot of agents, they have 2 parts to their job. One is they have the key to get them in the door, show them around, and then fill out forms. Okay, and they'll start with, what do you want to offer? Okay, $340, all right. And then you want a home inspection? Yep. And appraisal and financing, yep. And radon? Radon's bad, yeah, you should do that. Okay, that's the extent of the talk. And so then when you get to them and you're like, ooh, and there's the things in red that are bad, safety things and health hazards, and you're like, oh my God.
By spending this time with the buyers up front, every once in a while I get a call from a lender like, can you help this buyer out? Like, they have an agent, like, yeah, and I'm like, I can't. But they're like, they've looked at 20 homes and it's been a year and a half. I'm like, that's the agent, 100%.
Yep.
Like, I could take someone who's brand new, who's never bought a home before, they're terrified, and in 5 days, we miraculously go through this a psychological arc I found that we have to go through all this stuff. And it's not a time thing, it's not a year, it's not a week, they have to go through all these steps. I can get them to go through all these steps very quickly on a timeline, but by the time, all of a sudden the lender will call and go, we have an offer accepted, full price, and they're extremely happy. We're like, oh, what in the world is that about? I'm like, because I know they need to go through these things.
You're
Go,
prepared.
yes, we're gonna go, and then, but then if we spend the time up front, we're not gonna offer 20 times for 20 grand less. And I was like, you know, I don't know how these agents even handle it, but not only, it's not just for my time, but the buyers are happy too. They don't wanna go through all this, and they're keeping terrified, like, okay. I would say when you leave this buyer class, you're gonna feel like $1 million, because you're gonna learn all kinds of stuff you didn't know was gonna help you, and you're gonna ask 1 million questions. And then throughout the whole process, you're to keep asking questions. And that's what we want. That's why we say, is Uncle Bob gonna be there? I would say, and so I said, so sometimes they'll take us up on that, and I love it. And my record was like, 3 years ago, we had 7 people, because they brought mom, dad, brother, like their kids, whenever we had 7 people, went to all the houses. But when we got to house number 7, everybody's like, yep, that's the one. And then I broke my record with 8, like it was last year. And it is total chaos. And everyone's shouting out questions, and I'm like, you know, but I love it. It's so much fun. But my point is that once we get to the one, everyone's in agreement.
Yeah.
Like they saw it all, you know. But just doing that prep work ahead of time with these buyers and with our sellers, pre-inspection, whatever, we spend the time with them up front, teach them, educate them, and teach them something they didn't know that they could use that's gonna help them. Whole process goes smoother. You know, instead of this whole like, I'll follow your lead and yep, you know, and then they're like, how are you showing 25 houses in a year?
Who wants to do that? That's
good
freaking
Lord,
insane.
yeah.
Wow.
Another thing that helps is on our end, prepping them when they call, because I'm sure everybody gets it. Yeah, I want to make sure everything's up to code and this and that, and I straight up tell them right on the phone, this is not a code inspection. We are not looking at anything
That's one thing you
code.
get a lot.
Oh,
Want to
yeah.
make sure things up to
Especially
code.
from the dads.
Well, they hear that we're an inspector, so that's their expectation, is that we're
It's really
inspecting for code.
That's
Like a
something
city
I'm gonna-
inspector.
I'm gonna
Right.
write that down.
Yeah, so I would just pre-front that to them too, like this, they're not looking at code.
Yeah,
A
see, that
home
stuff's
that was
helpful.
built
I never
50
knew
years
that.
ago
Yeah.
does not need to.
It's the assumption they make when they hear the word inspector.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, you must be licensed by the city or something, or.
Mhm.
So I always just let them know right away, and I've had people say, I'm gonna find somebody else. Okay, fine,
Oh,
if you can find somebody that's gonna write, and I've seen reports where they will write, not up the NSF, to electrical code, this, that, whatever.
Right.
I've seen the reports,
And
and,
isn't the code based on when the house was built? Like, it'd be grandfathered in.
Most of the
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
right.
yeah, but the reports that I've seen are referencing new code.
Yeah, it all depends
In
on
an
the
old home.
structure, the municipality, yeah.
Yeah.
So I just straight up tell them, I forefront it right away and just let them know, this is not what we're here.
Yeah,
to do.
we try to present it as you guys are checking to see if things are doing what they're meant to do. A roof is meant to keep the rain out, or the windows. Is it doing that or not? You know, is a fogged window a defect? Well,
If it's a
the window
1-year-old
itself
window.
isn't defective, but it's still keeping the rain out. That's what I'm worried
Yeah,
about.
and all that stuff's about perspective.
Is
If
it
we prepare
fogged?
ahead of time, they're okay with almost anything. They just don't have to be surprised, you know?
Yep.
You know, I would say like, you know, these reports look the same to us after a while. You ever see 20, they all look the same. You know, I'm like, oh, let me guess. The gas line is gonna be grounded, and the kitchen, you know, sink is not gonna have GFI outlet, and you know, and then, you know, and it'll have all that stuff. They all have it, you know? But we're looking for an anomaly, or the expensive, or the dangerous, or the, you know. And then, so then when they see the report, then they're like, it's just diffused all that emotion, and they're like, oh, they knew it was coming. But if they just see like, oh, look at all the red on there, you know. The other thing too, just for you guys, is a selling point for you is, again, protect your client for sure, but how you present it is everything. So you can say, man, that's the worst roof I've ever seen. Or, you know, not that, that's a bad example. That roof, you know.
It doesn't owe you anything.
It's, I wish I could think of the good example of how, or you could say, this roof is nearing the end of its useful life and should be replaced within X amount of years. That sounds a lot better than, holy crap. You know, I mean, there's
Holy
just,
crap,
there's-
that's gonna cost
you
you
can
30
you
grand,
can accomplish
dude.
the same thing and protect your buyer with different words, the same way that mean the same thing, but don't freak them out.
Well, and we don't know what the legalities are of how you can present things, but one thing we would appreciate is on your averages, I know you have all the averages of how long the water heater's supposed to last, how long the furnace is supposed to last, all this stuff. But if it could be softened a bit, for instance, my house, which I brought up earlier, I live in an A-frame. There's my roof. I just recently, a couple years ago, replaced my shingles that were put on in 1992, and they were not bad. They were not leaking. So it was way beyond the average expected life expectancy for asphalt shingles, and yet that's a context where they say, well, if I've seen central air units from the 60s still work great, but if somebody services their unit by a professional every single year, and that central air unit might outlast me, so yes, there's the average, statistical average, I think my favorite class I ever took in school was statistics. And the old saying, well, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics, right? But if you could present this to people saying, these reports that we have in the average life expectancy of these different components, these are statistical averages. Statistics only apply to groups. They don't apply, so statistically, 1 out of a zillion of these containers is gonna leak. But that doesn't necessarily apply to this one. So it doesn't apply to this furnace, these shingles. So statistics apply to groups. Yes, the next 100 homes that have a 20-year-old water heater, a certain amount of them are gonna fail. Yes, but does that apply to this particular house right here? Not necessarily. Again, my mom, she has lived alone since 1988 now. Just her. Does her water heater get used real hard? No. She doesn't take a lot of showers, and she takes a bath a day, but that's it. 1 bath a day, 2 loads of laundry a week. That's and 1 load of the dishwasher. So that's all her hot water heater is getting used. Same exact water heater in my house, which I rent out on VRBO, which has groups of 8 every other weekend, is getting used a lot different. So it could be the same water heater, installed the same time, same manufacturer, completely different. So again, the statistical averages apply to groups that don't apply to this one. So we could just get that concept into people like, well, it's a 15-year-old water heater and the statistical average says 8 to 12, so yep, you're gonna need to plan to get a new one.
I had a 1932 water heater last year.
No kidding.
It was,
wow.
It was square. It was square. I've never seen one before.
A square?
And tell me that water heater didn't beat the statistics.
Yeah.
That's
bullshit.
I had a 1969 water heater. Thing was probably that big round and taller than I was. But I usually tell them when I have the deferred cost stuff, I just let them know it's at or beyond its typical life expectancy. But they made stuff back in the day to last.
Mm-hmm.
Now, your average, brand new furnace.
Right.
Well, that's why I encourage them to go to the home inspection as much as they can, or at least the
They'll
last
learn
half
a
hour.
bunch of stuff.
Because they can get context from you in real life. Because it's so important. Because you can exactly like you're saying, like especially that's why we like the experienced guys, the old guys, the guys who used to be carpenters, whatever. Because kind of seen it all, so that you don't get freaked out. You get the new guys out of school that don't have any background. They become and it's like they don't have any. They can't. There's no context. Like I've seen 100 homes built in 1945. They all have this. It's compared to like look at all these. So it's good having experience there because you can provide context to everything.
Anything else? Questions, comments about how we approach it? Oh, one last thing before I forget. Radon. Where is the radon unit supposed to be placed? The radon thermometer.
Lowest level of the home that
Lowest
could be
level
lived
level.
in.
That can be lived
Usable.
in, right?
You
don't know how
doesn't have
many
to be
I've seen
finished.
that are in the lowest level, period. Well, if it's a silo basement from the 1800s,
yeah.
it's not gonna be, don't put the fucking radon.
But if the furnace is down there,
No.
it's drawing that air.
No.
No,
Lowest
it's not.
level.
Nobody's gonna
Livable.
spend time there. It's not livable.
I know, but
Because-
you can argue that because that's where it's drawing air. I've done it in crawl spaces.
Yeah, but what does it matter? You're not sleeping in it.
Right.
Because it's sucking that air and taking it upstairs.
Isn't
That's
that
not-
exhaust
that's not
coming
thinking
from the
of it.
outside?
If that's the argument, then putting the monitor upstairs where it's sending that air
You can,
is.
yeah.
No.
Technically, you
No,
can.
because Okay, tell me if my teaching is wrong and my understanding of radon is wrong. Radon is slightly heavier than regular air, which is why it accumulates in the basement.
No, it comes from the basement and rises up.
It rises right up
Close.
through until it goes right through your roof.
It's
just
not heavy.
heaviest concentrations from the bottom, because that's the
That's where it
source.
starts.
Cause it's a noble gas, it'll go through everything, inside the
It
plastic.
doesn't matter if it's
Yeah,
a
but if
slab
you're
or
on the
not.
main level, every time you open the door to the outside,
Yep.
radon goes out.
Yeah, cause you could put one on like, say, a tri-level, and you would have different readings on each one, depending on
As-
where it's accumulating.
Depends on how tight
It's,
that house
it's
is.
less going
Right.
up, because it gets diluted, but right in there, it's lowest level of the home that could be lived in.
Gotcha. 'Cause
So
it's
it's-
about spending time down there.
Right, it's
To
not,
me, if the washer and dryer in the basement, I'll set it up down there.
Right.
Or if
So-
it could be finished, the silo, no.
yeah, it doesn't have to be
Right,
finished, it just has to be a space that people might use, they might
Regularly.
Might-
spend time in there,
Right.
do laundry.
Are there places in town that have high radon that you see a lot over and over again?
Over the hills.
Oakwood
Oakwood
Hills,
Hills?
yeah.
Staples Soda.
So I tell
Up by,
people,
I just had
all
a
the apple
94
orchards by
on-
Apple, or by Chippewa, all the apple orchards
94
out
in
there.
Fall
There are a lot of readings up there.
I just had one over by the Eau Claire Sports Center, one of those townhomes, by Craig Road.
Mhm.
That one was, I think it was 9.6 or something, and the reason they wanted it is because the realtor has seen multiple radon systems on other townhomes in that area,
Mhm.
so,
Have you guys had any where you tested one, there's a radon monitor and it's still testing high?
yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
I had
Oakwood
one where they
Hills.
installed one,
Um,
and then it came back high, even after they
Mhm.
just
I-
put a system in.
Years ago, I had one that they put, I did a test, came back high, they put in a system, did another test, came back higher.
So what do you do? Put another system?
They had to go back in and they had to reseal all the cracks in the concrete floor, and they put in a bigger fan, and then they got the numbers down.
Okay.
Who was that guy that did a radon thing here a while ago?
Oh,
Greg?
That young kid that was really kind.
Greg Eldridge?
Greg Eldridge, on site.
Oh my God, 'cause some of his systems, they fail all the
Hmm.
time. His fans are oversized,
Does he warranty him? Or does he fix him?
never calls back,
Okay.
he's in, he's out.
Okay.
Yeah, but like Nate said, you know, if we do minimize things, you know, if you're not gonna give a notice of defect of a radon reading that is 6, then there's no point in doing a test. Because we're not gonna risk canceling the contract over it. Because if it's, you know, $800, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, are you really gonna cancel this, you know? you're
Actually,
gonna
just did a
cancel and start over, and
inspection
so-
and radon test for a guy who did not have any of that in his contingency. They convinced the listing agent to allow it. We did the inspection the day before closing, because that was how they were like, well, what if we do it the day before closing? And then he came back out of it.
Sure he
Whatever.
can.
The radon test was a 19. As far as I know, he still bought it, but I told the listing or buyer's agent, I said, well, whether it's a 4.1 or a 20, the cost of mitigation's the same.
Sure.
Sometimes.
Right.
Like, it's,
My
Depends on
brother-in-law
the
was
budget.
just in one, and because the guy got priced, that they wouldn't even do it, there's a couple companies that wouldn't even do it. So he went in there and looked at it, and I said, what'd you do? He says, backed off. He said, there's no way you can fix it. So the house still sits there, they can't fix it.
That education house we did had 3 different points in it where they were.
This one here had a crawl space.
Crawl
There's no way of
space,
sealing that crawl
that
space.
they couldn't get in and seal.
Couldn't seal it, there's no fix to it. So, and they were sitting at like pretty high, like it's in the teens. Now they can't do a goddamn thing with it.
Makes
So-
the house more airy, so it
So,
just disperses it.
what am I looking for in, as far as ones that can't be fixed?
Crawl space
Crawl
is
spaces.
the biggest thing.
Okay.
Crawl
Dirt-
space
dirt
that
floor-
you
dirt
could
floor.
not-
Okay,
that you
so,
could not access.
so I'm gonna argue with this one though, so back to my statement way earlier, that if you have a problem you can fix with money, you don't have a problem, you have an expense, so can you fix that? Yes, you can, jack the house up.
No, you
Put
can
a little
fix it,
basement,
but
sure. Right, so
for
you
the
can,
price, it's just
so
not-
it's,
you can't.
right, so it's fixable, one way or another it's fixable, but also, if that house is built in 1970, 80, 90, whatever, if somebody's lived there in all those years, and guess what? They didn't die of lung cancer. And how many people do we know that have died of lung cancer that didn't smoke cigarettes? Anybody?
Yeah.
How many?
As long
Well,
as they know that going in,
Cabbage.
they can decide.
Jerry Pavich died of lung cancer. He never smoked a day in his life.
Was it because of radon?
Well, I don't know if there's any way to test for that, right? I mean, he was a carpenter, so there was asbestos, there was dust, there's all sorts of stuff, but
there may be genetic disposition to that too. Like,
Yeah.
One person might
But-
live in a house that's 100 and never get cancer, whereas the guy that lives in a house with 2 might get cancer
Yeah.
because
And we're not
it's
trying
just
to make
genetic
decisions, we just
disposition.
Let them know the options are, and then
Yeah.
they make the call.
Yeah.
Is it risky or not, you know, it's a.
Back to statistics that it likely,
Right. I always laugh though when people hire me to do an inspection and a radon test and then they're smoking the whole time. I'm like, cancer, why are we doing the radon test?
What's the point of this? Well, thanks you guys, I appreciate your time. Anybody doesn't have my card or my number, I brought some cards if you want. If you have follow-up questions later, let me know.
One thing you were talking about, things that can help us out ahead of time, is letting the buyers know, and, because we get these phone calls all the time where they'll call and say, well, I need an inspection done. Well, when do you need it done by? Well, we're closing the end of May.
Mhm.
Well, that doesn't mean anything to
Don't
me.
care. Right.
When is your
Yeah.
contingency up? What do you mean? Lots of people don't know when that contingency, so then you ask them, well, when did you put the offer in? 2.5 weeks ago. Well, you're probably pretty close to the end of your contingency by now.
We, in our office, we have that part down. They
Yeah.
know right away.
Yeah, we
But-
try hard to, once an offer gets accepted, to have a joint email to anybody that's relatively involved, laying out the timelines. And so, I'll say that, okay, we got the offer accepted today, so today in terms of counting our deadlines is day 0, so tomorrow is day 1. And so then we have 20 days for the inspection to give notice, and so let's get the inspector in preferably within a week, and then, so the clock is counting. And it's days, it's not business days, it's days. So I don't care if 4th of July, we still need to.
But for all you guys, anything in 2 months from now, if you're like, that annoys me about agents, text us.
Yeah, let us know.
It's some of this, a lot of stuff that is bothersome to you or a lender or a title company. I'm like, it's such an easy fix on our end, and that's why we try to because it's industry. There's so many moving parts.
You probably have more problems with art and than what we
Well,
do.
that's
with your
why.
company,
Well, that's
just
why.
'cause we're not dealing with
But
it.
those are the things that we're kind of bringing up
Anything
as
you
far
can
as
do
like
to-
context. So if we can get the buyer to be there and have some context with you guys, because you guys, that's everything. That's so much. There's so much psychology and everything. So you're at the most fragile part of the.
Well, and the psychology thing is funny is that we are classified in their mind as salespeople. We're working to get commissions, we're working to get paid. We're of course we want to sell stuff. You guys though, you guys are honorable. You're just knowledgeable and you're here to
Neutral.
point out problems. You're neutral, and so they trust you more than they trust us. It doesn't matter if I've been showing them shit for the last 3 months. They trust you guys implicitly. Inspector, you're salty there.
I've seen
They're
that where
guys.
the realtor will tell them, this isn't that big of a deal, and I'll explain. I'm like, yeah, this really isn't that big of a deal. Yeah, my realtor said that, but I didn't trust them.
Right.
They just want to
They
get
just-
the paycheck. And
Yeah, they just want to get paid. And, yep,
One thing,
totally. So we're
you guys-
used car salespeople, and then there's you guys.
You guys may or may not know this, but up until about, I don't know, maybe 2000 or something, I couldn't figure out when I started 13 years ago, and I started watching looking at TV shows and movies, and they're always like, ooh, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, look at these countertops, and I'm like, you don't do that. Like, we're not trying to sell them the house, but it used to be like that.
Sure.
Legally, every licensed agent was automatically representing the seller. Even if I've known you for 20 years looking at houses, my job is to sell you the home. And that's the job of the listing
Back in the
agent.
day,
Yeah.
right.
Well, then the government realized that was dumb, so they're like, well, that's where they came up with the buyer agency form. It's not meant for the agents. The buyer agency form is meant to protect the buyer. Now they have representation. So now the buyer has their agent, and they negotiate on their behalf, and the seller has their agent, and they negotiate on their behalf. That's what the buyer agency is for. Now, agents like it because I don't want to show 20 homes over 6 months, and then they just call someone on the sign and they get paid. So we like it because we now have a legal contract together.
Right.
But that's why I say when the difference is instead of trying to sell you the home, I always tell them if I go in there and I think it's a pile, we're let's go. We can do it better than this. And so I'm usually we're critical of the houses we're into. We're trying to make sure that they don't overpay because we want to get hired by them and referred later. So we don't want them to overpay. We don't want them to be upset. So we represent the buyer. We have their best interests at heart, and our interests are tied together now. We make and as you call the listing agent, they're going to get paid the full commission, or we get paid half-ish. If they get paid half-ish, it's the same commission. It's either going to get split. So a lot of people don't realize that. So
question for you guys then: how do you deal with dual representation where one agent is doing buyer and seller?
So if the agent does it right, so, 25 years ago, dual representation was legal. And that was on our forms that we have, that was one of the boxes we would check, that would say that buyer and seller, understand that the agent's working with both of us. Of all the, every year when the state, they do a summary of all the complaints that they have during the year, and the ones that have the most complaints, those are the ones they address, and sometimes they make changes to the forms. So dual agency got taken away as one of the standard boxes that's an option. And so now if an agency is gonna allow, if they're gonna allow two agents in the office, like Nate and I are gonna both work for, people, so Nate could list a house and I could sell the house, and that's okay, even though we're under the same umbrella of the same company. But if I list a house and I have my own buyer, there's two ways that we can play the game. The buyer can just be a customer, where I'm not representing them, but I'm okay to show them my listing and fill out the forms, but I'm not giving them advice. So I'm not advising them on, is the price good, or,
What you should negotiate.
what you should negotiate for. I'm just, you tell me what you want, I'll fill it out, I'll bring it to the seller. If the buyer though says, well, I want you to represent me too, we can do that. We have to add in extra language that says both parties are aware that I'm working for both of you. And the part that makes it okay, if we try to explain to both buyers and sellers, is when we're talking about offers, for both of you, we're gonna talk about that there might be another competing offer. And so my job as a salesperson is not really to talk you into anything. And so I'm going to advise you on the fact that here's what the seller's gonna see, and the seller would prefer this, less stuff versus the more stuff. But you're gonna tell me, buyer, in the end, what you want. So you're gonna tell me yes or no on home inspection and radon and lead paint and financing and appraisal. So really, a lot of that stuff's not really negotiating. Either you want it or you don't. So a lot of the negotiating is down to price, earnest money, and closing date. Well, earnest money, my answer is the more, the better. If you can put down 10 grand, 10 grand looks better than 5 grand, and 5 grand looks better than 2 grand. So how much earnest money you should put down? More. How much should you pay? I don't care what you pay, because I want you to make the offer that if you get it, you're happy, and if you lose it, that's okay too, because another offer comes in and you lost. And so for the buyer, I'm not telling them what to pay. I'm not advising them on the price part. But then I move over into this chair over here to sit with the seller, and I say, hey, got you an offer. It's my own buyer, so you know. But just as a reminder, the reason that it's okay, seller, is that I didn't tell them to offer this price or ask for these contingencies. They chose that on their own. They know that another offer might appear out of the blue from Nate or from the other person, and might come in and beat them. And so I don't want the buyer mad at me because, well, geez, Paul, you told me to offer X, or you told me to ask for these contingencies. And so I let them make the choice. But then when I bring it to you, seller, I go, here's the deal. Can you live with all this stuff? And if they say, nope, it's not enough money, I want to counter, then I reiterate, okay, if the buyer walks, you're okay with that, right? Yep. Okay, fine. Then if we counter, I'm not telling the seller what to take. And so even though it's my buyer, so I'm on your side of the table now, seller. So let's say the buyer told me, oh my gosh, this house is awesome. It's the only one, we'd love it. We'd probably pay more than full price. But let's start at $340 on this one, $349. Let's start in there and just see where it goes. Well, even though they told me that, I'm not gonna tell you that because I have some obligations to them. But even, let's say I tell you, for whether it's ethical or not, let's say I told you, boy, these people love it. It's awesome. I bet they'd pay more because they indicated that they would. And so, if the seller makes a counteroffer based on me telling them that, and in the meantime, the buyers are sitting at home, looking on their phone on Zillow, and that other one gets listed down the road that's a better deal and it's cheaper and it's only $3.25 and holy cow. And they're gonna say, oh, they countered? Never mind, we're going on to this other one. So now the seller's mad at me. I thought you said they loved it. Well, they loved it yesterday when they wrote the offer. They loved it at $340.
But also the buyer
Today,
and seller
though,
both have to
they
sign
don't-
off that it's okay to represent both. They both have to
Right,
give
so they
permission
both
for
have to
that.
agree ahead of time that it's okay that we're.
Or they can
both
demand
sides of the
another
fence.
agent within the, or there's another box that says it has to be a different agency.
Within
But they-
the office or whatever?
Yeah.
Or they can demand another agency, but, A, it's rare to double sided.
Yeah,
But
it's
then
really
B,
rare.
they both have to agree that how it's gonna be done and who's gonna do it, so.
Yeah, we want to, if anybody feels uncomfortable, we'll just say, I'll have another agent talk
Yeah.
with you about whichever side, wants separate. But that way, we're not telling the buyers what to pay or do, we're not telling sellers what to take. That's what makes it okay that I could work in the middle.
On a listing that we
Good
have,
question.
if one of our buyers makes an offer on a house that we have listed, and, another offer comes in, we'll tell them to put it in a sealed envelope. That agent and us, and then we'll present it to the seller at both times, so we don't see the other offer until the seller sees the other offer. Only our office, I know, does that, I don't know if anyone else does that, but that's what we can do.
Or times, like, we've had it where Nate has a listing and an offer comes in, that maybe it's from an agent in our office, maybe it's from Nate. I'll have the other agent email it to me, so I'll present it to the seller.
We
Even
did
though
last
it's
summer.
Nate's
Yeah,
client.
no, give it to Paul, I don't wanna see the other offer, I don't want you to think.
That was-
I-
there's no
I saw your
appearance
offer and
of
told my
any-
buyer to do a little bit more or whatever, so, like, give it to a different agent, so, you know, this.
Yeah, we want no appearance of impropriety.
But yeah, so that's why it used to be called, you know, we were sales, they were, agents were salespeople back in the day, but it's not anymore. The only sales we have is like, please pick me over another agent.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
or
about the
if-
only
If
sale
I have a
we do.
listing and a random buyer calls in, then I default to the old way, my job is to sell them the house. This is great, everything's wonderful, price is great.
Countertops.
Right.
These countertops.
Look at these countertops. But then at that point, we're obligated, and that's what, you know, we're obligated to tell them how it works. I represent the seller, I do not represent you, we have to tell them that. Now, most agents don't, but that's the law. So, at that point, you say, you give a broker disclosure to customer and say, this is how it works, you're a customer, you're obligated to explain that stuff.
You want an agent on your
But-
side, then
right.
we'll talk about
You
it.
gotta tell everyone whose side you're on all the time, but
Yep.
it doesn't happen a lot.
I did an inspection in Thorpe once, when you guys were talking about countertops, the guy from Texas bought the house sight unseen. I was there at the inspection, he flew in for the inspection, cause then he had some other stuff, it was for his family, his mom's health. So he flew in and was gonna help her for a bit, and we get to the house and we're going through it, and he keeps looking at the kitchen. And I'm like, what's wrong? Are these granite? I said, no, they're painted. Why? The agent told me that they just put new granite countertops in this house.
Wow.
And they were painted, like Menard 3. He backed out of the house, but he lost his service.
I was at a house one time, old couple, and we're talking, and they said, well, could we call these hardwood floors? And so if you just glance down, it looked like 1960s, narrow maple floors. And I go, well, why? And they said, well, look close. Well, they just take really nice plywood and taken a ruler and with a pencil, and they drew lines, and then they just shellacked over the
I can't
top.
imagine the stuff you guys see.
And I went,
I'd love to
well,
set up a beer with you guys and
it's
just
wood.
tell stories about the stuff you guys have seen in houses, man.
So in a case like that where they advertise granite countertops and they're not granite
She walked them
countertops.
through it, and she said they were all.
Right, so is there no liability to like say, oh, you owe me granite countertops? Like, if they advertise that this is what they are, and
I
you're,
think so.
like, is there no,
We have to, there's so many
No
different
recourse.
variables in that, it just
So,
sounds odd that they'd lose their.
I've been hired recently as an expert witness in a real estate lawsuit, and it's where everybody's suing everybody. Any real estate agent, anybody who has a real estate license is deemed to have a higher level of real estate knowledge than a person that doesn't have a real estate license. So even though you guys probably know more about homes and building stuff than I do, I'm deemed to have a higher level of knowledge than you are, because I have my license and you don't. And so in a court of law, yes, I would be held liable for statements, because if a person relies on the purchase, if one of the many things that made them buy that house was granite countertops, and I said there's granite countertops, then they could sue. So then the question is, do they wanna take the time to sue? Am I willing to, I as the agent, my company willing to say, no, screw you, take us to court? And then I have to hire an attorney to defend it in court, or am I just gonna stroke a check and go, sorry, yeah, I thought they were granted because I didn't know what I was talking about. So then it's really down to attorneys who's willing to pay more, because there would be liability there. So if a person takes what we say, so remember, that's back to when I was talking about the one paragraph that says, anything that matters to you, I want you to check it out by an independent third party. So I got hung once when I was a rookie, and I didn't know about that paragraph, because that paragraph, it's on an extra addendum, it's not part of the regular offer, so it's on this extra form that you have to include on purpose. Well, I didn't know about that. And it was in a neighborhood I grew up in, and it was the whole neighborhood was built in the 70s, Putnam Heights, South Junior High. And my parents had a gas forced air furnace. All my friends, their houses had gas forced air furnaces. And so I'm a rookie in real estate, and the guy in the office lists a house, and I can see it out my mom's window. It's right there. It's one block over, and it had an oil furnace. And so I'm doing an open house for the agent, and buyers come in, and they said, well, I don't like oil. Can we switch it to gas? And I thought I should be an expert because I know this. And I said, yeah, it's no big deal. Excel Energy will run the first 50 feet of gas line for free. So, yeah, no sweat. They buy the house, and that one block of Jensen Road, originally when the subdivision was put in, they didn't run the main gas line down the road.
Oh my God.
And so Excel, when they called Excel to hook up, they said, yeah, well, you're like 4 houses deep from the end of the main line. So if you get your 3 neighbors to hook up to us, then we'll run it to you. 3 neighbors said, no, we already replaced our oil furnace with a new oil furnace, so no, we're not replacing. You should have heard how mad those people were at me. They screamed. It was ugly. It cost me money. And what I should have said was, I don't know, call Excel Energy. And if I would have done that, that would have saved all the problem.
That's why some of the, like, we have a young girl that just started, and like, in some ways, you're better off than the guy that's kind of handy.
Right.
They're gonna over talk about stuff they don't know about.
Yeah, I know about this. I know about roofs.
Johnny,
Oh,
what
good.
did he say?
This is like the dumb.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Well, we have a saying, actually, the longer you're in real estate, the dumber you get. I don't know anything.
Really?
God, have you been selling houses for 30 years? You don't know if those are good windows or not? Nope, not a window guy. Sorry, I'll direct you to where to talk to the window guy.
The more you know, the more people expect from you.
More liability you can have.
Yeah, well, just like the agent with my example of the 200 amp panel that didn't have a 200 amp wire, we dealt with that. So, don't know. There was an agent that I worked with that he had a relative who had a lot on the Chippewa River up above the dam in Chippewa. And the relative said, hey, I want to sell the river lot. What's it worth? So the agent, because it's his relative, he thought he'd be helpful. So he went down to Chippewa County zoning, talked to Doug Clary, and Doug said, nope, FEMA map right here says, it's in the flood zone. It's not worth anything. You put a picnic table on it. So it's worth not much. So they sell it for not much. And a year later, the uncle or relative, whoever, is driving by the lot, and here it's split into 2, and there's 2 basements going in. And he goes, what the fuck? And so he calls the agent, his relative, and the agent goes, what the fuck? And the agent goes back down, there's Doug down at Chippewa County zoning, and Doug goes, well, yeah, we looked that up, it's in the FEMA maps right here. And the other guy in Chippewa County zoning goes, no, those are the old FEMA maps. Here's the new one up on top of the cabinet up here. And, FEMA did all the flood zone maps. That one's not in the flood zone anymore, and wasn't in the flood zone when he sold it. But if the agent would have said, hey, Uncle Bob, I don't know, why don't you go down to zoning and figure it out, and zoning still would have screwed it up, then the uncle would have been mad at zoning, not at relative. I bet Christmas is really fun, because that nothing lot was worth a whole lot. But it was because the agent tried to be helpful. So back to the question of, is there liability for saying it's granted? Yes.
Well, just like you guys have an experience after the years, learning under these guys with a bunch of experience, it was never theory. I mean, well, does this work like this? No, but let me tell you why. But they always had a story. And so, like, I learned from their mistakes, and I'm like,
Well,
okay.
that's what you're, yeah.
So I had a guy that's like, I only want to buy this if I can split this, double lot and then build a house. And there you go. Well, here's the number to the county, or the city. And so I called to it, and he goes, yeah, you can definitely split it. Whatever. And I go, all the same, I want you to call them, and then you can ask some follow-up questions or whatever. No, that's not, I'm lazy. I just, we called him, yep, absolutely. Turns out, couldn't build a house there. Once they did, that's the only reason he built it. He bought it, but guess what? I didn't say it, because he had that problem before, I'm like, okay, well, I'm not gonna do that, so wasn't my bag.
I was just
Our
looking-
realtor did that, said, cause it was a big lot, and said, oh yeah, you could build over there. And I never called, I mean, it did, there was plenty of room. And, so we had some plans made up and I called to the county and he says, oh no, he says you're about 300 square feet short of being able to split the lot.
Right.
Small bag.
God.
So there was a contractor, I talked to him, but I was in town this morning talking to him, and he bought a lot on Mead Lake for a house, cabin. And a year ago, he tore it down, I mean, he goes, inhabitable, so he goes, tear it down, but he's gonna rebuild, so he went to Clark County, said, hey, I'm gonna tear this down, but I can't do it this year, but in the next 2 years, what do I got for time frame to rebuild? The guy goes, 2 years. Okay, this year, he went there, said, hey, I'm gonna start putting that foundation in. The guy goes, on where? He goes, on that lot.
No.
He goes, oh, you missed the 45-day deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's unbuildable. So now he did not spend a lot of money for a lot, now it's unbuildable.
Well, the difference
And it's the
is,
same guy that told him.
well,
In an email.
yes.
But he's like,
The difference between a real estate agent and a government official is they can sue the real estate agent.
They can't do the government.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, according to, I'm like, and you know what, they've been good about this last few years. I'm like, I'll call and ask for you, that's fine. But can you send me an email? And they go, yep, because I'm not gonna get sued. They can
Right.
put anything in writing they want.
Go ahead, sue the government.
And I'll just forward what they told me, you know, so I did the homework, but it's not according to me. But, yeah, you can lose a lot of money in this industry, you know, and not make a dollar, so.
Up in Chippewa, just because of the government not having liability, up in Chippewa, looking at a brand new construction house and in the garage that's unfinished, there's no tie downs on any of the rafters. And I thought, how do we know, you know, if they've got their occupancy permit, how do we know that the house was done? All finished. Like, how do we know first time we get high wind, we're not gonna have cracks in all the drywall because that roof lifted? And so I called downtown and I said, do you guys just have a record, like a checklist? Here's the things I looked at. We just wanna know that the tie downs were done in the house. And the first thing he says to me, I'm not liable for that. That's on the contractor. I'm not looking to blame you. I said, I just wanna know if you know that you checked it. But like, they have no liability. They can miss whatever.
Right.
They have no liability.
We see a lot of stuff on new builds.
Yeah, I did one in the golf course in Altoona years ago, and it was a guy sold his big house, bought one there, and he bought a 0 lot line house, so his side was on this side. And he called me after I did his, he called me and asked if I'd come through it, and I'm like, you know what, I was coming here on Wednesday night, I said, you know what, I'll stop by and look at it, if there's something I gotta write up, then I'll charge you, if not, he was just a nice old guy, so he went there. The ceiling is all nice, hatched off in the garage, even got the blower door test from, what was that company back then? There was one on there, and it had the city inspector's thing, tag right on it. So I asked him, I cut it, went up in there, because there was absolutely no vents outside. Dryer vented in the attic, all the bathroom fans vented in the attic. Get in the attic and I'm looking, they didn't even insulate the back side of it. They insulated this side, nothing on the back, oh, it's just a shit show. There was no drywall between the two units, I can walk right into the next unit. That's all I did, is I said, I'll take your pictures, I said, I don't even wanna I'm not even charging you, I said, I'm gonna take your pictures, they said, you deal with the city. Ooh, I don't know what happened, but oops.
I called Terry one year and I go, cause they're like, it's new, should we get an inspection like that? So I just got, Terry, would you, he goes, well, let me tell you about 3 things I found this year. And I'm like, oh, okay, yep, new inspection, new homes, you get an inspection.
I just had one a month ago. Reverse polarity outlets, missing GFCIs, right next to the kitchen sink. Like it wasn't even, it was right there. Plumbing was leaking.
And the contractor probably knows all the subs, right? I mean, I don't know.
That's what they always say.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's always a sub.
Yeah.
Yep. It's always a
That's
sub.
easy to put off,
Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank
your time.
you.
Appreciate you listening. Yeah, anybody needs a card? Glad to answer questions.
What do we got for password?
Copper key. Ooh. One word.
I don't wanna play poker with you guys.
All right, getting on Water Street now?